You're watching porn. You finish. You close the tab. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a thought that you don't let yourself have for very long. Is this affecting me? Most men don't ask that question out loud. And most of the ones who are experiencing problems, they're not necessarily connecting that to porn. They're blaming stress, age, or exhaustion, or their relationship. Here's what I notice in my coaching practice. When I start asking questions, the same variable keeps showing up over and over again: porn. Most people who talk about porn focus on what it does to your mind or to your relationships, and that's not at all what this video is about. This video is about what regular porn use does to your body. 4 very specific, very physical mechanisms that are quietly rewiring your arousal response, reducing your sensitivity, and creating a cycle that can be very hard to break until you understand what's driving it. The good news, for most men, every single one of these things is completely reversible, and you can develop a healthy relationship to adult content. But first, you need to know what's actually happening below the neck. Symptom 1, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, otherwise known as PIED. I want to start with a stat that I found pretty striking when I came across it online. 1 in 4 men newly diagnosed with erectile dysfunction is now under 40 years old, some as young as 17. These are men who do not have cardiovascular disease or diabetes or any obvious hormonal explanation. And research shows that this rise in young male ED directly tracks to the rise of high-speed internet porn. This is not proven causation, but this is a correlation that is so consistent and across many populations, it's very hard to dismiss. So what is the mechanism? It is inside of how it works. You see, porn delivers a level of high novelty, high stimulation input at a volume and frequency that the human body was not designed and did not evolve to receive. But people are adaptable. So over time, the arousal system recalibrates to that level of stimulation. And not only that, but we have the experience of getting hooked. Because the same brain areas that light up in compulsive drug users light up in compulsive porn users. And just like with drug use, there's this phenomenon of wanting more without actually enjoying it more. And that's the really important piece to get out of this, wanting and even having more, but not experiencing more enjoyment. But back to the body, because here's the physical consequence of that recalibration. In a survey of over 3,400 men aged 18 to 35, erectile dysfunction was strongly associated with the compulsive quality of porn. It was not strongly associated with masturbation frequency and not how often they were having sex, which means that porn was the key variable. I've said it before, I'll say it again, how you masturbate is your dress rehearsal for sex. And when you only masturbate to porn, you train your arousal to respond to one very specific kind of stimulation. And when a real physical partner replaces your screen, the wiring that you've built doesn't always transfer. It's like your body is waiting for your laptop before it can really get going. Our second symptom is something I see a lot in my coaching practice, and that is delayed ejaculation or the inability to reach orgasm with a partner. I have worked with men who were completely and undeniably attracted to their partners, had great chemistry, had a great connection, and still had a really hard time finishing. I've also worked with single men who had the same issues with casual partners. Either they didn't finish at all, or it took so long that the experience became frustrating for everyone involved. And some of them could only orgasm through very fast, very intense stimulation. And they struggled to feel much of anything when things slow down. When I hear that pattern, my mind goes immediately to porn use. And after we rule out any medical issues, I'm usually right. And here's why. Porn involves complete control. You choose exactly what you watch and for how long. If you don't like it, you just click away. You click to something else. Real life sex doesn't work that way. Neither does a real person, a real partner. The sex depicted in porn is also typically rougher and more thrust heavy than what most partnered sex looks like, because that's what reads well on camera. And that framing, plus being disassociated from your body and unconscious about how you're stroking, because your mind is so much on what's happening outside of you, trains men to touch themselves faster and with more pressure. So then what happens when you're with a partner? Human beings are unpredictable. They move at their own pace, they have their own needs. The sensory input is different from what your body has been conditioned to expect. And so you can't get to the finish line. Our next symptom is the one that surprises men the most when I name it. And that's because it doesn't feel like a problem at first. It just feels like needing more intense content, more specific content, more speed, needing more pressure, needing things to be more extreme than what used to work. I've worked with men who describe the shift this way. They started with something pretty standard, and over time, that stopped doing it for them. It's not because they wanted something darker, it's because their threshold had moved without them noticing, like they were a frog in water. Here's the physical mechanism. This happens the same way that your tolerance builds with alcohol or any other drug or stimulant. Your nervous system recalibrates to the level of input it's receiving. Over time, you simply need more to feel the same thing you felt in the beginning. That is not any kind of moral failure, it's just adaptation. But here's the part that really matters for what's happening in your body. The same tolerance dynamic applies to physical sensation, not just what you're watching. When men masturbate to porn, they tend to touch themselves in ways that match the intensity. Fast, tight, relentless. Over time, this creates what is called penile mechanoreceptor desensitization. Basically, the nerve endings that register touch and pleasure become less responsive because they've been overstimulated at the same high intensity, high friction, over and over again. Then when a real partner touches you, and usually slowly and softly and the way that she wants to be touched and actual sex tends to feel, your body can barely register it. Not because anything is wrong with them, although they might be afraid that that's the case, and it's certainly not because you're not attracted to them, it's just that your sensitivity has been reduced. I had a client who described it perfectly. He said that it was like wearing a glove that he could not take off. He could feel pressure, but pleasure itself was pretty much gone. Now, this isn't usually permanent, but you don't fix it by doing more of the same thing. You fix it by slowing all the way down and reintroducing your nervous system to subtler sensation, which is exactly what the recalibration process is more about. But more on that in just a minute. First, there's one more mechanism that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important one, and that is the shame cortisol loop. A study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that men who self-identified as addicted to porn were significantly more likely to have erectile dysfunction. And not because of how much porn they watched, but because of the shame around watching it. I know shame sounds like an emotion, and this video is about the body, but I want to talk to you about the physical cycle that shame triggers in your body, because it can and it does produce real measurable dysfunction. So here's the cycle. Porn use leads to shame. That shame creates a cortisol spike. That's a stress hormone. Cortisol suppresses testosterone. Lower testosterone contributes to a whole bunch of issues, including erectile dysfunction. And often that ED just drives men back to porn because it is familiar and it is controlled and it is what works. I will never forget one of my clients who had been trying to quit porn for 2 years when he came to me. He'd gone weeks at a time without it, only to eventually relapse and spiral into shame. And every relapse made his ED worse. Then every bout of ED drove more shame, and then he started avoiding sex with his partner entirely because the anticipation of failing felt worse than just not trying. He did get out of it, but we had to address the shame loop before anything else could change, because there's nothing wrong with watching porn. The only issue is when you feel shame about it. In his case, once he stopped treating every slip up as a catastrophe, once he understood that this was just a pattern he was stuck in and not a mark on his character, the physical symptoms began to ease alongside the behavior. It didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. If you've been watching this video and you're thinking, oh, let me reassure you, this is not a black and white issue. Not everyone who watches porn watches it compulsively. Not everyone who watches porn develops these symptoms. Even if you recognize yourself in some of what I've described today, for most men, this is completely reversible. I have seen it in my coaching. I have seen it in the research. Clinical case reports have documented full restoration of erectile function following porn abstinence. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months, but it does happen. It only happens though if you do what works. And here's what I see most often in men who try but hit a wall. They stop watching porn, they try to get aroused without it, and then nothing happens. They panic, they conclude that they're broken, and they go right back to porn. That specific moment of silence and panic is why I recorded an entire album of masturbation meditations. I recorded every single one. So when you're in that moment, it's my voice with you in your ear, coaching you through it. I know from my own experience how hard that silence can be, how alone you can feel in it, how much it matters to have a guide who you trust meeting you exactly where you are instead of leaving you to struggle through it alone. The track built for this specific moment is called Pleasure Without Porn. It's a guided visualization practice that I developed working with my one-on-one clients. It takes you slowly back into your body, widens your pleasure pathways, rebuilds your sensitivity to subtler sensations, and gives your nervous system somewhere real to go. And the best part is that if you are ready, you can use it tonight. It's on sale right now, just like with all of my other courses. You get a 90-day money-back guarantee so that you can test it out, try all of the tracks, all of the practices, and if you don't notice a significant shift in yourself, feel free to email me and I will give you all of your money back, no questions asked. The link for the album is in the description of this video. If I have named something that you have been dealing with, please do not gatekeep and please do not think that you are the only person dealing with this. You can share this video, share the album, because I guarantee someone in your life needs to hear this too. I'm Caitlin V, and I'll see you back here next week.